This is My Australia. Hi there, Adam Gilchrist here, and welcome to This Is My Australia. For many years, I spent Australia Day on the Adelaide Oval, doing the best I could wearing the green and gold. Some days were great, other days were pretty tough, but perhaps not as tough as Jessica Watson had it for Australia Day 2010, having survived yet another storm in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. Jessica captured the hearts and minds of millions as she sailed solo around the world and was later named the Young Australian of the Year in recognition of her amazing achievement. It's been 4 years since Jessica sailed onto the world stage. So what inspired such a brave leap of faith and fighting spirit from this 16-year-old to take on the world?
When I first started sailing, it's no joke, I'm not exaggerating when I say I really didn't like it. I was terrified. It was cold and wet, and that wasn't me. You could put some of it down to the fact that I was very little. I just didn't have the muscle. The reality was I was just a wuss. But it really wasn't until I decided to sail around the world that I actually told myself, and I remember quite consciously telling myself, well, if you're going to do this, you actually need to toughen up. You need to stop being such a wuss. You need to be more like Emily.
Jessica was always the quiet little sister who was quite into her doll houses, and only later on that when we got into sailing, Mum and Dad took us down to the sailing club, and I started sailing a bit more competitively than Jessica, and she was a lot smaller than me at that stage.
I used to see Em and I used to go, I wish I was like that. I wish I could be out there having fun and be that bit braver. Because I was very scared. Growing up in Australia, I suppose I was lucky enough to see a lot of it, which was pretty special, and see it in quite random and different ways. Your Mum and Dad, I think, they were very much into camping and doing things like that. They dragged us out, and I think Mum and Dad's motto was very much that we had to try everything to see what we liked, to see what our passion was. So we went and did all sorts of very interesting things. A lot of people who I'm inspired by and, find really inspirational. I'm lucky enough to have one of them as my sister.
Yeah, I don't know if I'd call myself inspiring, but it's nice that she thinks I am. Everyone thinks she's my big sister, but she's definitely my little sister. Yeah, she's my best mate. She's my absolute best friend.
Mum reading to us as a kid was always a very big thing. It was really something she felt was really important. And one of the books she did read us was Lionheart, and that was Jessie Martin's story. And it really I'd never been interested in books like that. The books that I loved were sort of fairy tales and princesses and, happily ever after. I don't know what it was that really just sort of struck me and what made me so fascinated with it. But I do know the biggest thing was, sort of getting to the end of the story and realising Jesse did that, and he was just like an ordinary guy. He was just like any of the characters in these stories that Mum would read us. He was just like one of us. And look what he did. It just set me thinking, if that's what he can do, and he's just an ordinary guy, what is it that we can do? What is it that I can do? Jesse Martin's the guy we can blame for, so much of this for me. It put the idea in my head, and he was such a big inspiration through the whole thing. Probably the best thing of all about Jesse is that, having looked up to him for so many years, having thought he was so incredible, then having met him and getting to know him, realising that he's just as awesome as I thought. And I think that's really special.
Jessica, I've got the press release here, and it says that not only do you want to break my record, but you want to smash it.
Oh, does it say that? Oops. Well, yeah.
It hurts.
Oh.
A big part of in writing the book, my message to young people was, you can go out there and live your dreams. She took it the most literal of anyone I know. I think my parents have influenced me a lot in different ways. Nothing was ever impossible for Mum. So if we had an idea, the question would be not whether we could do it, it would just be when we could do it, whether it would be soon or whether we'd have to wait to do it at a later stage. And then with Dad, I suppose I learned a lot of practical elements from Dad. The first sailing trip that we did with Dad was where I first had the idea of getting on bigger yachts and going further than Queensland. So when I got back from that trip, I started reading books and read books about people who had sailed around the world on their own. And that's where I started to think, oh yeah, I'd rather sail around the world on my own than be at school. So I began there, in the library at school. It was just an excuse to get out of school. I suppose Mum's biggest support was, for the world trip, was not saying no. And then she beat that by mortgaging the house to buy the yacht to show sponsors that we were serious. So she was like where it all started.
I was 12 when I sort of first started talking about it. I know that I was always very serious, as a kid, and I was so lucky that I had been taught that these things are possible. I'm not sure Mum and Dad exactly were aiming for something like this. I think they were aiming for me to believe it was possible to finish school or, do something a little bit smaller scale. But they'd sort of dug themselves their own hole in some ways there, that they had encouraged me and made me believe that, amazing things were possible. The next step was to actually get out there and test the boat, test the systems on board, the critical part of it. The particular sea trial, I think everyone heard about. I wish there was more people who didn't hear about it at the time. The first night out to sea, I ran into a 63,000-ton ship, which is pretty much the biggest ship going around, and this was my first night at sea, and I ran smack bang into the middle of it, shiny new boat, and obviously an incredible amount of damage. Pretty terrifying experience. So to actually get out there and to have everything completely fall to pieces around me and to realise that my head just clicked into gear. Before that, I had this niggling little doubt that I thought I could do it, but I'd never actually tested it. All of a sudden, I was so much more confident. At the same time, everyone else had so much less confidence in me.
Premier Bligh has urged solo adventurer Jessica Watson to rethink her voyage around the world.
This is a very high-risk venture. Frankly, it's one that I would be reconsidering.
The first thing I heard when she got back was, we're doing repairs and we're still heading out. That was like the best thing she could have said, I think that's when all of Australia was, well, from then on, that's when I was really on her side, because it just seemed, some of the comments seemed just really unfair.
The day I actually left was very emotional. It wasn't a feeling of, jumping off a cliff, of being really upset that I was leaving or, not going to see them. It was just more the emotion of actually, it was a lot of pride, getting to this point. It was incredible.
At no point did I ever think, this girl can't do this. Everything I saw in her, she was quietly spoken, she was confident, she's quite a small girl, but I knew that doesn't matter.
The storms I was expecting. I remember laying bets with mates before I left about how many times I'd be rolled upside down, or sailors call it knocked down. The roaring, tumbling noise, which is somehow louder than all the other noises at a time like that, which are horrific. The howling, the screeching of the wind. A wave like that, you hear it, hold on, you brace yourself. The boat's turned completely 180 degrees upside down. My feet were going up the walls and on the roof, as that's happening. You're standing on the roof and you're just waiting for the boat to come back upright. The worst knockdown we got, it wasn't just being rolled upside down, it was being chucked upside down, but then thrown like a toy into the trough of the next wave. The force and the size of a wave to do something like that is just, I don't want to think about it.
The other thought is, usually in this day and age, in this modern day and age, we always think that technology can save us or people can come and get you. Considering the location you are and it's nighttime and the storm, no one can help you. When it's bad, you hate it. But when it's good, it's beautiful, you love it.
I got this really beautiful sunset happening out beside me here. It's lovely. And a bit of a treat because I haven't had a nice sunset for a while, so it's really cool.
Australia Day in the middle of the ocean was quite a lovely one. remember speaking to the Prime Minister at the time on the day, and he wished me Happy Australia Day, so I thought that was quite a special way to spend the day. Had some Vegemite, pretty simple things that sort of remind you of home and make you feel like you're part of the day, even though I was completely on the other side of the world. Getting home was just completely and utterly overwhelming. The boats, you know, people again. Everyone's faces were incredibly vivid. It sounds like such a strange thing to say, but my little sister kept saying to me, "Stop looking at me, stop staring at me, you're making me uncomfortable." But I don't know what it was, but it was, oh my gosh, people, you know, look at them. And let alone, you know, the other things that were going on. The point that I actually got to the Opera House, our Prime Minister, who was there to meet me, had been waiting for a good 4 hours, which is pretty horrific.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome Jessica Watson home.
He then stood up and told me that I was a hero.
You know something? You may feel a little wobbly on your feet just now, but in the eyes of all Australians, you now stand tall as our newest Australian hero.
For me, I really wanted to make the point. There was one thing that I wanted to say to everyone there on the day, and that was that I wasn't a hero. That was so important to me, and still is.
I'm actually going to disagree with what our Prime Minister has just said. I don't consider myself a hero. I'm an ordinary girl who believed in her dream. You don't have to be someone special or anything special to achieve something amazing. You've just got to have a dream, believe in it, and work hard.
I'm a very ordinary girl, and I don't have superpowers, and I wanted people to understand that this is something that anyone can achieve, or you know, anyone can achieve these amazing things. So I did have to correct the Prime Minister when he called me a hero, which after I'd been waiting for 4 hours was probably not the nicest thing to do.
And the winner of Young Australian of the Year is Jessica Watson.
I really struggled with the Young Australian of the Year title to start with. I really didn't feel like I deserved it to start with. But I have to say, at the end of the year, things changed because I was put through an incredible year of travelling around, working really hard, visiting loads of schools, and I sort of had to see it as an opportunity rather than this accolade, an opportunity to go out and share the message, you know, as a platform rather than an award, and I felt better about it as that. Being a young Australian, I think, like any of us, we are incredibly, incredibly lucky because we are in a position where literally the world is at our fingertips. We can do anything, you know. What I did is one thing, but, you know, there are so many different things. Not everywhere in the world has that, so we are incredibly lucky to have a country where we can, you know, we can do anything we dream of.
Jessica Watson captured a place in Australia's heart when at just 16, she sailed solo around the world in 2010.
I'm an ordinary girl who believed in her dream.
Jessica's amazing achievement was itself inspired by others, especially Lane Beachley, another great Australian who also mastered the oceans.
Lane's just that, you know, inspiring female role model in a world, you know, that is very male-dominated. So that was always a big inspiration to me, is to see what she did. And, you know, she's one of the guys, but at the same time, you know, she's done something that's pretty amazing. She was there supporting me, which was really lovely. To have somebody who obviously I admired and looked up to, you know, not necessarily saying anything particular, but just there and behind me was a really nice thing to have.
I was very surprised Jessica named me as one of her inspirations. I'm deeply inspired by Jessica and her exploits. I draw inspiration from seeing people achieve outstanding things, and Jessica's obviously one of those people. So to be named as one of her inspirations is outstanding. I mean, it's astonishing, and I'm very honoured by it. Well, my greatest inspiration as a child and now as an adult is still my father, my dad Neil. He's just endured so much, but he's always been that pillar of support. He's always been so consistent. So he's been my greatest influence. When I was 6 years old and I lost my mother, that made me very independent and strong-willed. And I was always a tomboy, so I was always attracted to outdoor activities and doing things that the boys were doing. When I was 8 years old, the most profound impact in my life occurred when my dad told me I was adopted. And being told I was adopted had this impact of feeling worthless, feeling rejected, feeling abandoned. And so from that information, I chose to make something of it. And it wasn't always surfing. It was tennis, it was soccer, it was cricket, it was hockey, it was any sport that I loved. But my natural affiliation, my #1 passion in life was surfing. So I chose to make a profession out of it, even though it wasn't a viable opportunity, even though my school teachers told my dad to lock up my surfboard and make me concentrate on my studies. I love proving people wrong, and I managed to do that. But it wasn't without hard work and dedication and commitment. But I just wanted to become a world champion to prove to the world that I was worthy of love. Out of all the world titles I won, I'd have to say the first one was the most satisfying because that's all I felt. I felt this overwhelming sense of relief and satisfaction because I'd been claiming to the world for 16 years that I was going to become a world champion. But the most special world title was my 7th one because it just took an enormous amount of courage and dedication and belief and surrender to win it. I love celebrating Australia Day now. I'm probably one of the most parochial, proud Australians. Thousands of people used to converge on the Opera House stairs and we used to have a race across, and it was the first activity on Australia Day in Sydney, and we used to shut down the harbour. The ferries couldn't operate between 7:30 and 9, and we used to paddle across the harbour on longboards. And it was a great way to start the day.
In recent years on Australia Day, I've mostly just hung out at the park with friends. Yeah, had some beers in the sun. Slowly the kids are starting to get born, so all the toddlers are around now.
Jess is a kindred spirit because she has so much courage. She's so brave. She's so willing to put herself out there and try. She's such a pioneer. She doesn't allow external factors to define who she is or what she's capable of. That, to me, is definitely a kindred spirit because that's how I live my life.
I think Jessica's a hero in the truest sense of the word because the tradition of the hero is to go out and learn some type of new knowledge out there in the world and bring it back and share that. And she's done that. She's gone out and sailed the world her way.
To see her as a 16-year-old jump in that little boat and have the courage and conviction, and also with the support that she had to enable her to sail around the world and be the youngest person to sail around the world solo is an extraordinary effort and deserves all the accolades and all the attention and all the respect and recognition that she receives because she's a rule breaker, she's a game changer, she's a thought leader, she's a renegade. And I love that spirit.
The biggest thing I learned, and the thing that I hope people can take away from the voyage, is look at me. I was a girl who was scared of the water, who was very ordinary, and I sailed around the world. I like that says anyone can do anything. You know, you don't have to be a certain type of person to achieve something. It doesn't have to be sailing around the world. It doesn't have to be something big and dramatic at all. Whatever your dream is. I think we so often say we can't do that, or I can't be one of those people, you know, in books, on TV. But you can. You can. You've got to take it and work back from it and tell yourself you can do it.